Swagkage explaining the Susanoo Naruto.
Alright, what's going on everybody? Swagkage here, and welcome to today's video, where as you can tell, we're going to be talking about the Susanoo. I briefly covered the Susanoo a bit in my Mangekyo Sharingan video a little over a year ago, but I didn't explain every aspect of it. Well, I did explain a bit of the requirements to unlock the Susanoo, and I briefly touched on the different stages of development it has. There's a whole lot more to it than what I explained in that video, so let's go ahead and jump right into it. Susanoo is the ability a person unlocks after they've unlocked the abilities of both of their Mangekyo Sharingan. And as you can tell, this means that it is a Sharingan exclusive ability. There's a bit of a widespread myth in the Naruto community that a person has to be able to use Amaterasu and Tsukuyomi to activate the Susanoo.
So that was actually... That is a falsehood that a lot of people believe in. Quoting, many people cite this page from the third data book to support this. Third data book, from my understanding, never actually... No, the third Shippuden data book never came over. This is only true in the case of Itachi. The fourth data book specifies only Mangekyo Sharingan need for a person. Yes, no. Yeah, it's because Itachi could use could use Amaterasu and Tsukuyomi. So in his case, him unlocking wow, words, brain. Tsukuyomi and Amaterasu allowed him to progress into using Susanoo, which is only his case because he's the only one that can use both Amaterasu and Tsukuyomi exclusively in the way that he can. Thus, Sasuke just needed to unlock his abilities, Obito needed to unlock his, Shisui, quote-unquote, his, right? Yeah, this is definitely a falsehood that people have believed. You have to use Tsukuyomi and Amaterasu. That is... Nope, that's not true. And
that's not the case. Madara can't use Amaterasu or Tsukuyomi. Sasuke can't use Tsukuyomi. Shisui certainly can't use Amaterasu or Tsukuyomi. And Kakashi and Obito definitely can't use either of these abilities. As I explained in the Mangekyo Sharingan video, all Mangekyo Sharingan grant a person different powers. So unlocking a specific set of abilities isn't required to use the Susanoo at all. The only prerequisite is for a person to be able to use the abilities in both of their Mangekyo Sharingan, and after that, the Susanoo will begin naturally developing. Susanoo literally translates to he with the ability to help by all means. And as one of the only ninjutsu that entails the creation of another being, I think this is a pretty fitting name for it. Now,
as at the bottom, also the name of a Shinto god of the sea and storms, brother Amaterasu and Tsukuyomi. A lot of Naruto abilities have been taken from Shintoism, if you couldn't tell. Yeah, god tier ability.
Well, two of you who don't know what it is, the Susanoo is like an extension of their creator's will, and it comes in the shape of an ethereal humanoid armed with various weapons. The Susanoo is typically thought of as both the ultimate offense and the ultimate defense, though this description applies to Itachi Uchiha's Susanoo in particular. Anyhow, the reason it's thought of this way...
Think of it like an ethereal mech if you haven't seen Naruto to this point. Think of it like you can conjure an ethereal mech.
Is that the humanoid created by the Susanoo surrounds the user as it's being formed. This means that a user of the Susanoo stands on the inside of it, and as you can probably imagine, it has to be pretty big to compensate for that. Both of these traits complement each other very well and contribute greatly to the technique's effectiveness in battle. It's also important to keep in mind that the Susanoo is incredibly sturdy, and since it surrounds its user, this means that attacking them while the Susanoo is active is very difficult to do. To further add on to that, its large size allows it to both attack enemies from very far away and dish out attacks with incredible destructive power. So for anybody at Jonin level or below, the Susanoo is a nightmare to face off against. Of course, such a ludicrously powerful technique does come with a pretty high cost.
Right, and as we've discussed before, right? Oh, well, some of these abilities are just, Amaterasu specifically, Amaterasu and Enton Kagetsuchi, right? Oh, well, everyone's just dealing with Amaterasu and late Shippuden. Yeah, because we're dealing with the S+ tier of the shinobi world, right? We're dealing with Kakashi, we're dealing with Obito, we're dealing with Kaguya, Madara, Hashirama, right? Yeah, they're gonna get around Amaterasu fairly easily. Anyone jonin and below? Oh, crap, that's Amaterasu. Anyone jonin and below, right? Right? Hear me out. You get some tuning coming out. And then he finna bust out the Susanoo. That Chunin's gonna just wreck himself. Like, what is this? I don't want to deal with this anymore.
Like all Mangekyo Sharingan techniques do. And this cost is likely the highest of any of the abilities granted by the Mangekyo. The first and most obvious drawback associated with using the Susanoo is that it requires a monstrous amount of chakra to keep it active. There's not much more to say about that. That clause is pretty self-explanatory. But further adding on to this, Sasuke explains to the audience during his battle against the 5 Kage that using the Susanoo causes the user to feel an intense amount of pain in every cell in their body. Whether this was a literal explanation or hyperbole isn't explained, but Sasuke does point out that the pain is excruciating even when using the Susanoo's lower stages. This seems to imply that higher levels of Susanoo use entail a more intense feeling of pain, but I'd also imagine that later stages of Susanoo drain a user's chakra more quickly as well. The final drawback is...
I would argue that the pain has to be correlated with the chakra consumption, because it's going to require a massive amount of chakra to sustain this thing, especially in the higher stages, because you are, for all intents and purposes, using your chakra, your energy, right, to fuel an ethereal mech armor around you. it's gonna take a lot of energy.
Associated with using the Susanoo is the progressive deterioration of its user's eyesight, though this issue is a bit more complicated than it might seem at face value. So, first of all, while it's not actually necessary for a person to have their Mangekyo Sharingan active to use the Susanoo, repeated use of it does contribute to a person going blind over time, just like their other two Mangekyo abilities do. If a person causes themselves to go blind this way by overusing their Mangekyo Sharingan abilities, they will not be able to use their Susanoo anymore after that point. This was clearly shown to the audience when Sasuke's Susanoo completely disappeared after he went blind from Mangekyo Sharingan overuse. However, if a person goes blind for other reasons, they will still have access to their Susanoo, as shown when
cough cough Madara.
Madara was able to use his Susanoo with both of his eyes missing. And though this source isn't quite as credible, as also shown when Shisui was able to use his Susanoo with just one eye in one of the Naruto Shippuden Ultimate Ninja Storm Revolution
we don't consider this canon. Technically, this is just more fan service.
Cutscenes. One thing that makes the blindness caused by Susanoo overuse pretty difficult to work around is the fact that progressing the Susanoo to its higher stages requires that a person become seasoned in using it. It's necessary to have experience using the Susanoo to evolve it, which also means that to access more powerful stages of the Susanoo, a person has to use it repeatedly. This is pretty counterintuitive because by the time somebody has evolved it to its armored state, they will have already either nearly gone blind or completely gone blind, meaning that all of the time and effort they spent training to use their Susanoo will have gone to waste. As with
think of it like to master a punch, right? So if you keep punching, right, to master this punch, you have to keep punching, but the more you punch in that certain way, the more it degrades your joints. Think of it like that, right? There's a risk reward, right? There is a reward in, oh, I get better at mastering this one punch that maybe a lot of people can't counter. However, in this theoretical example, your joints will continue to degrade gradually.
With every other Mangekyo Sharingan ability, it is possible to bypass this drawback by acquiring the Eternal Mangekyo Sharingan, which also serves to slightly lower the Susanoo's chakra cost as well. Now, as I've alluded to all video long, the Susanoo does have various stages of development that a person can access once they've unlocked them. After first acquiring the Susanoo, a person will only be able to access its initial stage, though as I mentioned earlier, repeated use of the Susanoo will eventually allow a person to access higher levels of it. It is worth noting that a person can still access its lower levels if they choose to, even if they have access to the Susanoo's final stages. Since the Susanoo's various forms vary quite drastically from one another in terms of appearance, power, and abilities, this is a very nice skill to have access to. Now, while each subsequent level of the Susanoo is vastly different from the one that preceded it, all of them do have a handful of traits in common.
I mean, so what's kind of saying is like, so while you can access the higher stages, so say you go from a chisel to a pick to a hammer to a maul, a granite maul, if you will, at Ridscape reference. You know, sometimes you need the granite maul. Sometimes you need the pick. Sometimes you need the scalpel. You having access to all the former iterations of the Susanoo and their abilities and their usage as well is incredibly. I'm running out of words here. It's incredibly useful.
The Susanoo is capable of protecting its user from physical attacks at all stages, though its durability varies depending on what level is being used. Of course, this does mean it is possible to break through a Susanoo with brute force, though doing so becomes harder and harder as a person progresses it to its higher stages. In the rare event that the Susanoo is shattered, however, it will not regenerate and will only reappear once its user conjures it again. Additionally, while no physical attacks are capable of passing through the outside of the Susanoo, it's possible for a user to launch ninjutsu and other attacks of the same sort from the inside of the Susanoo. In other words, the barrier-like exterior of the Susanoo will always defend its user to the best of its ability, though never at the user's expense.
Part of me wonders if that's partially intent, though. Like, this hasn't been outlined anywhere, because it's entirely possible to block all incoming damage, right? But meanwhile, it's entirely possible to, say for Uchiha, to throw a fireball jutsu outside of it. Part of me wonders if they can kind of, you know, make it more protective or less protective depending on the situation, right? Because say, for example, if Madara Uchiha is throwing a fireball outside of his Susanoo, right? Earlier Ribcage Susanoo, right? While he's doing that, it's entirely possible that someone could throw Shuriken in through the fireball and hit him, right? However, in other instances, you're going to see Madara completely just deflect the Shuriken, right? So there might be a level of intent there that hasn't been explored quite yet, and I don't know if we will get to that point with where Boruto's going at the moment.
This does come with a few weaknesses of its own, though. Since the Susanoo isn't completely solid, this does leave its user susceptible to sound-based attacks and visual genjutsu. But since the Sharingan makes a person almost entirely immune to visual genjutsu, this isn't much of a weakness anyway. Aside from this, a user of the Susanoo will always be suspended within it, regardless of what stage they are using. Now, it's generally very difficult to pull somebody out of their Susanoo with
will always be suspended in the inside. I don't think that's correct, because we've seen instances of like Sasuke's crossbow Susanoo on the Land of Iron Bridge, where he's standing on the floor with his bow ready to go. Like, we've seen Madara float inside the perfect Susanoo. I'd have to challenge the validity on that, on the grounds that we'd have to see more citation.
Without breaking it first, but in the rare event that this is done, the Susanoo will immediately dissipate. Even if a person was able to escape from inside of their Susanoo, this would just cause it to disappear, so there's no use for doing so.
That feels like a built-in safety mechanism of the Susanoo in regards to a magic system, because if the user leaves, suddenly, one, they're not at the core to keep chakra generating into the system, right, into the system of the Susanoo. Therefore, it's just going to dissipate because the core, the heart of the Susanoo is now missing, as well as if, say, Madara is being pulled out here, right? If Madara were to get pulled out of the Susanoo, and say he had less chakra than he's supposed to, right? If he had less chakra than he's supposed to, it could still drain his chakra without providing the positive benefits of being inside of the Susanoo. So it could be a built-in safety measure.
These are the only similarities between the various stages of the Susanoo, and they're also the only similarities between the Susanoo of various people. As many of you know already, the power, abilities, and appearance of a Susanoo is tied directly to the person who owns it. This means that even at the same development stage, the Susanoo of two different people will often be very different, with more than enough distinct differences to tell one apart from the other. The most notable of these is the color difference. For example, Sasuke's Susanoo is purple, Itachi's is orange, and Madara's is blue, but there are a few more
Itachi's is the only warm-colored Susanoo that we have canonically, from my understanding, too.
Subtle differences between individual Susanoo, and I'll get into explaining them as I explain its various development stages. The Susanoo's first stage allows its user to create its literal skeleton, complete with a ribcage, bones, and even a skull for a face. This level of the Susanoo can actually be broken down into various sub-stages, as it actually takes a while for a user of the Susanoo to advance all the way to the point that they have developed a full skeleton. Somebody who has freshly unlocked the ability to use their Susanoo will initially only be able to manifest its ribcage. This can be used for defensive purposes, but not much else. The only differences that exist between users across this stage are its color and its durability. It seems possible to increase this ribcage's durability by using the Susanoo repeatedly, as made evident by the fact that the 4th Raikage was able to break through Sasuke's Susanoo at this stage, but couldn't do the same thing to Madara. The next sub-stage of the skeletal Susanoo allows its user to manifest.
Part of that also could be the amount of chakra being infused into the Susanoo, because Madara has an infinite chakra pool, being in an Edo state, in his reanimated state. He has an infinite amount of chakra he could throw into it. Sasuke at the 5 Kage Summit was also just barely new to using the Susanoo, and while untrained, also didn't have a metric near infinite, if not infinite, supply of chakra to pump into that Susanoo. Because, I mean, the more chakra you're going to pump into the Susanoo as a magical system, I'm calling it a system, right? Because it really is the system of the Susanoo and how it evolves, right? And how it gets to its final stages. If you don't have the chakra to pump into it, it's going to be weaker and or smaller than if you did have the chakra to pump into the system itself. So therefore, more chakra into the system means you can do more different things, make it sturdier, make it larger, make it do different things.
Arms, and this is where differences become a bit more apparent. While Itachi and Sasuke just created basic arms with clenched fists at the end of them in this stage, the arm created by Madara during this stage is actually bladed and has a sword in place of a fist. Typically at this stage, users of the Susanoo only create one arm, and it isn't until they advance to the next stage that they create two.
It could be that, because in this one, Madara can also create a regular arm with a clenched fist as well, but Sasuke and Itachi have never shown signs of the ability to create bladed arms like this. It could, one, be a product of the era, because Madara was from the Warring States era before the villages were founded, and thus he was built different, let's put it that way, to survive, and had to use just different tactics. Not that Itachi, wasn't experienced in warfare as well, right? He was around for the 3rd Great Ninja War, from my understanding, or at least he was able to oversee his father at some point in the war. It could be that, one, Sasuke and Itachi didn't know how to do it, but two, it could just be that they really didn't have a use for it, that hands were just better for the situation. It's really speculation at that point, in my opinion.
The next sub-stage of the skeletal Susanoo is the entire thing. It doesn't involve the creation of an entire skeleton, but rather the entire upper half of a skeleton. Now, despite what I just mentioned about the Susanoo's arms, it is possible to advance into this stage without creating two arms, and Madara has even shown the ability to do it without creating either arm. Both of these stages grant the Susanoo offensive potential potential that the basic ribcage did not have. Though obviously it isn't until the entire skeleton is formed that the user is able to use this stage of the Susanoo to its fullest. The differences between various Susanoo at the final level of the skeletal stage are very minor, if even present at all to begin with, as in most cases, a person's Susanoo will not conjure weapons at this stage. An exception to this rule has been seen when Sasuke conjured a sword in his skeletal Susanoo's hands during the fight against Kabuto, but it might be possible for all users of Susanoo to conjure this weapon at this stage, since having a Susanoo that wields a sword certainly isn't unique to Sasuke. Anyhow, though it's not as durable or well-armed as later stages of the Susanoo, the skeletal stage is still pretty powerful and difficult to fight against. If the strength of Sasuke's is anything to base this on, one punch from this level of the Susanoo is enough to kill somebody. Danzo actually died after being punched by Sasuke's skeletal Susanoo and had to use Izanagi to return himself to life.
I'm pretty sure he died twice, because in the first one, in this still, he's crushed by the Susanoo, and then Sasuke's like, you know, one down or whatever, right? He's like, oh, that's one down in the name of my brother. And then Danzo shows up behind Sasuke and is just like, so this is where we have the battle with the eyes. And then Sasuke just rounds and punches him again, like, whoa, didn't I just kill you? Died twice from the Susanoo's arms.
Also, I guess it's possible to create 4 arms for your Susanoo at this stage, even though Susanoo users don't do this all the time, so I don't really know if there are any limits on it, but you just throw that out there. This ability is also retained in later stages too, so yeah, I guess that's worth keeping in mind. Anyhow,
intent versus chakra cost, I'd have to say, right?
The next stage of the Susanoo is what is typically referred to as the humanoid Susanoo. At this stage, a person's Susanoo will typically have a more human-like face than the skeleton seen in the previous stage, and the ribcage that's visible in the skeletal Susanoo can no longer be seen here. In most cases, at this level, the Susanoo will begin to materialize flesh, and will then materialize clothing of some sort on top of that. Of course, at this level, the Susanoo is obviously more powerful. It's more durable, and its basic attacks have a wider range. But what really sets it apart from the skeletal stage is that the humanoid Susanoo is typically granted a unique weapon based on the user. Itachi and Madara can both use the Yasuka Magatama beads at this stage, and Madara can additionally conjure 4 swords in each hand of his Susanoo, while Itachi gains access to the Totsuka blade, which can seal anything it comes into contact with, and the Yada mirror, which can reflect any physical attack.
This one is actually the one that garners a lot of interesting interactions in Naruto. So the Yada Mirror, Yada Kagami, a spirit weapon without a physical form, with the power to exchange every one of its properties, allowed to alter its attributes in accordance with the attributes of the attack, rendering the attack ineffective. If I remember it correctly, because it classifies as a spirit weapon, it can... So there was an interesting interaction. I'll have to dig a little bit deeper into this. Comments, feel free to comment on this. The Yada Mirror versus the Truth Seeker Orbs, it's an interesting interaction to think about. Because would the Yada Mirror reflect the Truth Seeker Orbs, or would the Truth Seeker Orbs eat the Yada Mirror? Would it reflect all the nature transformations to counter the Gododama? Or the Gododama, because it would be based in chakra, quote-unquote, right, the Yada Mirror, or would that actually overpower and destroy that? It's a very interesting thought experiment to go down.
Sasuke gains access to a crossbow, and after he gains the Eternal Mangekyo Sharingan, he can light the arrows he shoots from this crossbow on fire with Amaterasu, or even shoot arrows composed entirely of Amaterasu's flames with Ento and Kagetsuchi. Shisui Susanoo wields a hybrid between a drill and a spear in this stage, and he can also shoot out needles composed entirely of his Susanoo's chakra, and he can even coat this drill in flames using his fire release jutsu to increase its effectiveness and make surviving getting hit by it pretty much impossible.
Also not canon, it's in the it's one of the Storm games.
Guild users of the Susanoo can also manifest legs for their Susanoo at this stage, which drastically increases its mobility. Now, the only people confirmed to be capable of doing so are the only people who have access to the Eternal Mangekyo Sharingan in the series, Madara and Sasuke, so I don't know if a person's required to have the Eternal Mangekyo Sharingan before this can be done, or if this is a trait that's only unique to certain Susanoo. Now, if you
I would argue that enable to, because this is the one where you actually get suspended inside of it, right, because the legs take over the movement. I would argue at the point where you would start being able to manifest legs, your average user, their sight would already be gone. Their sight would just not even be there anymore, thus having them lose access to the Susanoo as is. So if you could extend your time, you know, maybe not indefinitely via Eternal Mangekyo, right? However, if you could extend your time, you theoretically could get up to this stage. We would have to know more.
Thought this level of the Susanoo sounded powerful enough. Well, we still have 3 more stages of the Susanoo to go. The next level is the armored Susanoo, which isn't significantly different from the humanoid Susanoo. Aside from its color, appearance, and size, this level of the Susanoo doesn't seem to have too many differences spread across its various users, though it's a bit hard to say because Sasuke, Itachi, and Madara are the only people to ever pull this stage of the Susanoo out, and all 3 of them do it very briefly. Obviously, it's more powerful and more durable than the humanoid Susanoo. And
I mean, if you need to tank up somewhere, if you need a turtle strat, I mean, it's not bad. But I mean, other situations just haven't. It's a massive amount of chakra in a very specific area. Whereas you could just cleave a mountain range, as Madara does with you know, the larger one.
And it obviously looks quite a bit different, since, as its name implies, this stage of the Susanoo causes it to manifest armor on top of the clothing and flesh it manifested in the previous stage. But aside from that, I can't tell you much about it. I will say that Madara's is gigantic, and Sasuke and Itachi's both look pretty similar, but that's really all I can think to say about it. It also doesn't seem to be possible to sprout legs out of this form of the Susanoo, since neither Madara or Sasuke do this, despite the fact that they could do so in the previous stage.
I mean, you theoretically could, but it's just a lot of mass, and I would argue the one we'll see next, the perfect Susanoo, is just better suited for this. I think this is better for camping in a specific area or being grounded, but just use the full body if you have the chakra cost.
I could be wrong about that, but, you know, just thought I would mention it. Anyhow, this is typically the last stage of Susanoo that a person can access before they go blind from Mangekyo Sharingan overuse. And before Madara showed up in the series, it was thought that this was the extent of a Susanoo user's capabilities. Even when Sasuke gained the Eternal Mangekyo Sharingan, he didn't exceed this level of the Susanoo, though it is worth pointing out that he did show a lot more finesse with using this stage of Susanoo. He gained access to the Asuka Magatama beads, and he could coat them inside of a Matarasu, and he showed on many occasions that he was able to combine his use of Susanoo with both of his Mangekyo Sharingan powers. Next, oh boy, next we have the perfect Susanoo, or as it's officially called in the data books, the complete body Susanoo. This Susanoo is to the armored Susanoo what the armored Susanoo is to the ribcage Susanoo. In terms of appearance, it looks really cool, but it's a bit ridiculous. Madara's perfect Susanoo is probably bigger than his statue in the Valley of the End is, so to say it's bigger than the previous stage of Susanoo is a massive understatement. Setting aside size and looking at pure aesthetics, though, the complete body Susanoo is almost completely different from any of the previous stages. It has Tengu-esque armor, and seems...
We started to see the Tengu features in the armored Susanoo before. This is where the Tengu features finally come to fruition.
To wear a mask with a combination of robes and armor plates. Most perfect Susanoo are also armed with a sword, though Madara's is armed with 2, Shisui's is armed with his lance, and Kakashi's is armed with Kamui Shuriken. And
the Kamui Shuriken are actually some of my favorite things. Like, that's probably my favorite weapon in the series. It's great.
Each and every one of them comes with a set of wings that allows its user to fly. It is so dumb, dude. By unsheathing his sword and dragging it across the ground, Madara was able to create shockwaves capable of blowing apart an entire mountain range. He claims that the perfect Susanoo has power comparable to that of the tailed beasts. And I mean, I don't know why he would make a claim like that when it's clearly stronger than the tailed beasts, especially in the case of Hagoromo. It is dumb that...
Technically that's filler. So the canon of it is arguable.
He has a Susanoo, but try and look past that for how dumb this next bit of information is. Anyway, Hagoromo, he has a Susanoo that's like the size of the Ten Tails in the filler, where he can use perfect Susanoo, so this ability is like stupid, dude.
It always felt like the Susanoo was kind of a narrative cop-out, and I'm not calling Kishimoto a bad writer by any means. The Susanoo originally was Itachi Uchiha's trump card. It was... You know, Sasuke, you know, it'd be gone with the thunderclap, drops Kirin on Itachi, cool, Itachi's dead. You thought that was my death. He just brings out his Susanoo, which, ironically, with the Naruto, into the Itachi doing a Susanoo, and it was the best thing ever. It was so funny that was an interaction in the card game that actually worked. But, like, where do you go in terms of just sheer majesty and power from the Susanoo? It's not impossible to think up a new narrative device. It's not impossible. I mean, we have, you know, Kamui Shuriken, right? We have trying to think of other things. We have the last quote unquote stage with Indra's arrow, right? The overcharged Susanoo, if you will. It's not impossible to introduce a new narrative device, however, or new ability really. However, if we were to give Madara something else, would it have arguably lived up to the sheer majesty of a complete, full-bodied Susanoo dragging a blade to carve mountains apart, right? I think while it was a narrative decision that could have been better and something else could have taken its place and not lessened what Itachi's trump card was, I do think that that was probably the best narrative choice that they had.
Sasuke was able to slash through like entire Chibaku Tensei planetoids like they were nothing at this stage of Susanoo. Madara was able to use it as armor for the nine-tailed fox, and Sasuke and Naruto have been shown combining Naruto's tailed beast mode with Sasuke's perfect Susanoo on multiple occasions to create this behemoth of a creature that's almost unstoppable. But this still isn't the most powerful form of Susanoo in the series. After Sasuke absorbed the chakra from all nine-tailed beasts at once, his Susanoo evolved into what many people call the final Susanoo, the ultimate Susanoo, or the Indra Susanoo, something along.
Okay, so technically this is less of a traditional quote-unquote form, and this is the product of, of Deus Ex Machina power. Because he is absorbing effectively the equivalent of the 10 tails, each of the tailed beasts, right? Being absorbed into this, the chakra overflowing the Susanoo to cause breaks in the armor. And even in the anime, less so in the manga, but in the anime, you'll see Naruto will try to use Kurama Avatar to punch it, and his fist just gets obliterated with how heavy and dense the Susanoo is at this point. This is more of a meeting of several key narrative things that outside of this specific interaction will never be seen in Naruto again. Because, we don't... While there's Otsutsuki out there, right? I mean, you don't necessarily have, perfect Susanoo users with a Rinne Sharingan being able to absorb the equivalent of a 10-tail every day, right? This is, I feel, a weird special case where shenanigans made this happen.
Along those lines. That, I mean, it looks awesome, but it's super over the top. It's essentially exactly like the perfect Susanoo, with the only difference being that the mask is lifted up, and all of the crevices between the armor are emanating pure chakra. Now, there are a few more aspects to the Susanoo that I would like to go over, but because of how personalized it is, many of the things I'd like to talk about involve discussing the abilities of individual Susanoo from various people. And while you might be wondering why I didn't cover how it's possible to unlock the perfect Susanoo, well, that's because it varies from person to person.
Yes.
And I mean, if I were to do that, I'd be here all day. I wouldn't have enough time to get this video out. So you can expect me to break down the abilities of individual Susanoo in separate videos that I plan on doing, where I hope to break down the entire skill set of individual characters. So yeah, this is where I'm gonna end the video off. Sorry about that in advance, but I have to get out 2 videos a week, and there would be no way for me to make like a 20+ minute video and still make the deadline. It was actually hard enough making this 15 minutes, so anyhow, thank you so much for watching the video all the way to the end. This was a bit more lengthy than usual, so I appreciate your patience. If you're new here and you made it this far, consider leaving a like on the video and subscribing to the channel to get updates when I post new content. And if you really love me, you can check the description for the links to my Twitter and Patreon account. And of course, as always, leave any ideas for future video topics you want me to cover down in the comments below. The Susanoo video was one that was requested a bunch, so, But yeah, I'm rambling now, so I'm gonna go ahead and end the video. Hope to see you in my next video, and I hope you guys have a fantastic rest of the day. But until then, yeah, talk to you later. Swagkage out. Bye.
The irony of him putting out, he put out a Minato video today. This one, how strong... I think it was this one, how strong is Minato? 25 minutes. I think he's laid off of the upload of 2 a week, but I mean, his videos are still really good. I really like these videos. They remind me of facts I may have forgotten, but also plot points that I feel should have been addressed. I mean, it's very hard to kind of top the Susanoo, let's be real. I thought this was great. If you enjoyed this as well, Swagkage is an interesting channel. I've been getting people wanting me to react to more of his content. I absolutely love it. If you haven't seen it, definitely recommend it. Awesome creator, does awesome content, very easy to dissect, very easy to get into. Whether you speak the lingo or knew it, awesome. Can't recommend him enough. Okay, so let us get into... Give me just a second, I need some water really quick. Now we start getting into some of the haha funnies. But I had to go through all of those because I needed to put a little bit of a backlog up before I could get into some of these. We have Pint. No, Swagkage is really good at what he does. I would argue he's amazing at what he does. I like his content. If I need to refresh myself on something Naruto wise, I mean, I do look at Swagkage for all intents and purposes. He has a great channel. He's covered a lot of topics. He's covered really all of the jutsu that he needs to at this point. It's very interesting.